The emergency alarm screamed through the halls of the Galactic Council building. Representatives from dozens of worlds ran in panic through the marble corridors. Some had 6 legs, others had wings, and a few looked almost human, except for their blue skin or extra eyes. But today, they all shared the same expression of terror. In the main council chamber, Ambassador Quaylen slammed his forehands on the speaking podium. His purple skin had turned almost white with fear. "This is impossible," he shouted to the crowd of alien diplomats. "In 3,000 years of galactic history, this has never happened." The giant screens around the chambers showed the same message over and over. It was written in the old galactic language, but everyone knew what it meant. The translation appeared in hundreds of different languages across the bottom of the screen. "The apex predator, Vorthok of the Crimson Claw, requests formal audience with human representatives, neutral meeting requested at Harmony Point Station. Terms: single delegation, no weapons, no fleet support." The chamber fell silent. Even the usual whispers and side conversations stopped completely. Someone dropped a datapad, and the small crash echoed like thunder in the quiet room. "Vorthok, the destroyer, wants to meet with humans," whispered Rickson, a Trade Federation leader whose people looked like walking trees. The same Vorthok who burned the Melodian Empire to ash. The same creature who has never spoken to any species except to demand their surrender. Ambassador Quaylen's voice shook as he spoke. "In recorded history, no delegation that has met Vorthok face to face has ever returned. The Crimson Claws do not negotiate. They do not trade. They conquer or they destroy. There is no middle ground with them." Meanwhile, 3 sectors away, Captain Li Tay was having a very different kind of morning. His exploration ship, the Soldan, was on routine patrol near the edge of human space. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hums of the ship's systems. Li Tay sipped his coffee and watched the stars through the main viewing window. "Captain," called Kim Swa from the engineering station. She was a young woman with short black hair and quick hands that could fix almost anything on the ship. "We are getting a priority transmission from Galactic Command. Level 1 classification." Li Tay nearly dropped his coffee cup. Level 1 messages were reserved for the most serious emergencies. Wars starting, planets dying, that kind of thing. In his 15 years as a ship captain, he had only received 2 Level 1 messages. "Put it through to my ready room," he said, standing up quickly. "Park Hannah Kong-woo, join me immediately." The ready room was small and practical, with a round table and 4 chairs. Park Hannah arrived first. She was the ship's xenobiologist, an expert on alien lifeforms and cultures. Her long black hair was always tied back in a neat ponytail, and she carried a datapad everywhere she went. She studied alien species the way other people studied poetry. That Kong-woo came in behind her. He was the diplomatic attaché assigned to their ship, a former military officer who had chosen the path of peace over war. He was tall and serious, with kind eyes that missed very little. His job was to handle first contact situations with new species, though that had not happened much lately. "What do you think this is about?" asked Park Hannah as they sat down around the table. "Nothing good," replied Kong-woo. "Level 1 messages usually mean someone is trying to kill us." Li Tay activated the communication system. The holographic display showed the official seal of the Galactic Council, followed by a human face they all recognized. Admiral Chen was the head of human diplomatic relations, a woman known for her calm voice and steady nerves. "Captain Li," she began without any greeting, "your ship has been selected for an emergency diplomatic mission. The situation is unprecedented and extremely dangerous." The 3 officers exchanged glances. Admiral Chen never called anything extremely dangerous unless it really was. 12 hours ago, we received a communication from Vorthok of the Crimson Claw species. He has requested a meeting with human representatives. This is the first time in galactic history that Vorthok has requested anything from anyone. Usually, he just takes what he wants. Park Hannah leaned forward in her chair. "The Crimson Claws are apex predators, Admiral. They have never shown interest in diplomacy with any species. Their entire culture is built around dominance and conquest." I know, replied Admiral Chen. "That is exactly what makes this so dangerous. We have no idea what he wants, but we cannot ignore the request. The Galactic Council is in chaos. Half of them think this is a trap. The other half think it might be our only chance to establish some kind of peaceful relationship with the most dangerous species in known space." Kong-woo spoke up. "What are the terms of the meeting?" "Single human delegation. No weapons, no fleet. Backup. The meeting will take place at Harmony Point Station, which is neutral territory. Vorthok will come alone as well, or so he claims." Li Tay felt his stomach drop. Harmony Point was a small diplomatic station in the middle of nowhere, designed for peaceful negotiations between species. It had no military defenses and no escape routes if things went wrong. "Admiral," he said carefully, "this sounds like a suicide mission." "Maybe," she replied, "but if we refuse, Vorthok might decide that humans are too weak to deserve his attention, and based on what we know about the Crimson Claws, that would mean our immediate destruction. Parkana was already pulling up files on her datapad. I have been studying the Crimson Claw species for years. They are biologically engineered for warfare. 8 feet tall, armored exoskeletons, claws that can tear through starship hulls. They are stronger and faster than almost any known species. What about their psychology? Asked Kongwu. That is the problem, Parkana replied. They do not think like other species. Their entire society is based on strength and dominance. The strong rule, the weak serve or die. They have no concept of mercy, cooperation, or compromise. In their minds, any species that is not strong enough to defeat them deserves to be conquered or destroyed. Kim Swa had been listening quietly from her chair. So why does Vorthok want to meet with us? What could he possibly want from humans? That, said Admiral Chen from the holographic display, is exactly what we need to find out. Captain Lee, you will take your ship to Harmony Point immediately. Kongwu will serve as our primary diplomat. Parkana will provide scientific and cultural expertise. The mission is voluntary, but I want to be clear about the risks. No human delegation has ever returned from a face-to-face meeting with Vorthok. The room fell silent. Each of them understood what the Admiral was really saying. This was likely a one-way trip. We will do it, said Kongwu quietly. If there is any chance of preventing a war with the Crimson Claws, we have to try. Li Tae nodded. When do we leave? Immediately. Vorthok expects the meeting to take place in 72 hours. That gives you just enough time to reach Harmony Point. Good luck, and may whatever gods you believe in watch over you. The holographic display went dark. The 4 humans sat in silence for several minutes, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Parkana spoke. I am going to spend the trip studying everything we know about Vorthok and his species. If we are going to survive this meeting, we need to understand what we are dealing with, and I am going to prepare for every possible diplomatic scenario, added Kongwu, though I have to admit, none of my training covered how to negotiate with a creature that views conversation as a sign of weakness. Kim Swa stood up from her chair. I am going to make sure this ship is in perfect condition. If we need to run, I want to make sure we can run fast. Captain Li Tae looked at each of his officers, feeling proud and terrified at the same time. Then let us get to work. We have a date with the most dangerous creature in the galaxy. As the Soul Dawn changed course toward Harmony Point Station, none of them could have imagined what was waiting for them in the depths of space. Somewhere in the darkness, Vorthok the Destroyer was also preparing for their meeting, but for reasons that would surprise everyone in the galaxy. The Soul Dawn jumped to hyperspace with a flash of blue light. Inside the ship, the crew worked quietly, each person focused on their own preparations for the impossible meeting ahead. The hyperspace tunnel outside the windows looked like a river of stars flowing backward, beautiful and peaceful. It was hard to believe they were traveling toward what might be their deaths. In the ship's main computer room, Parkana sat surrounded by floating holographic displays. Each screen showed different information about the Crimson Claw species and their leader, Vorthok. She had been studying for 6 hours straight, and what she learned made her more worried with each passing minute. The computer, show me the historical record of Vorthok's first conquest, she said aloud. The largest holographic display changed to show a peaceful planet covered in silver cities and blue oceans. This was Melodia Prime, home to the Melodian Empire. The Melodians were a gentle species who spent their time creating art, music, and poetry. They had never fought a war in their entire recorded history. The Melodians were artists, Parkana said to herself as she read through the files. They built the most beautiful cities in the galaxy. Their music could make other species cry with joy. They never hurt anyone. The display showed what happened when Vorthok arrived. His massive war fleet appeared in orbit around Melodia Prime without warning. The Melodians tried to communicate, sending messages of peace and offering to share their art and culture. They did not even have military ships to defend themselves. Vorthok's response was swift and terrible. His ships opened fire on the planet's surface, destroying every city, every art gallery, every concert hall. In less than 6 hours, a civilization that had existed for thousands of years was completely gone. The Melodians who survived were taken as slaves, but the worst part was what happened next. According to the reports, Vorthok came down to the planet's surface himself. He walked through the burning ruins of the Melodian capital, looking at the destroyed artwork in libraries. A few survivors had hidden in underground shelters, hoping the attack was over. The records showed that when these survivors came out and begged for mercy, Vorthok killed them with his own claws. Not because they were a threat, but because he wanted to make sure no trace of Melodian culture survived. He did not just want to conquer them, Parkana whispered to the empty room. He wanted to erase them completely. She closed that file and opened another one. This showed Vorthok's second conquest. The mining colonies of the Outer Rim. These were tough people who worked in dangerous conditions, digging precious metals out of asteroids. They were not artists like the Melodians, they were fighters. When Vorthok's fleet arrived, the miners fought back with everything they had. Their ships were old and their weapons were simple, but they knew how to fight. The battle lasted for 3 days and nights. In the end, it did not matter. Vorthok's forces were too strong, too advanced, too brutal. The miners were defeated, but they had shown courage in their final battle. Some species might have respected that courage. Vorthok did not. He ordered every mining station destroyed, even the ones that had already surrendered. He made the surviving miners watch as their homes exploded in space. Then he had them thrown out of airlocks without spacesuits. Park Hannah turned off the display and rubbed her tired eyes. Every story was the same. Vorthok would arrive, destroy everything, and show no mercy to anyone. It did not matter if his enemies were peaceful artists or tough fighters. It did not matter if they surrendered or if they fought to the death. The result was always the same. She opened a new file, this one about Vorthok himself. The information was limited because so few people had ever seen him and lived to tell about it. But the reports that did exist painted a picture of something more monster than person. Vorthok was born on Scareth Prime, a world where everything was designed to kill. The plants were poisonous, the animals were deadly, and even the weather was dangerous. Only the strongest Crimson Claws could survive there, and most died before reaching adulthood. But Vorthok was different. He did not just survive on Scareth Prime, he ruled it. By the time he was 20 years old, he had killed every other strong male on the planet. He became the alpha of his entire species, not through politics or intelligence, but through pure violence. The file showed pictures taken by spy satellites. Vorthok stood 8 feet tall, covered in red armor like skin that could stop bullets. His arms ended in claws that were sharper than most metal knives. His eyes glowed with a red light that could be seen even in bright daylight. But the most frightening thing about Vorthok was not his size or his claws. It was his intelligence. Many species were strong or fast or dangerous. But Vorthok was also smart. He studied his enemies, learned their weaknesses, and used their own strengths against them. The door to the computer room opened, and Kongwu walked in. He looked tired and worried. "Any good news?" he asked, though his voice suggested he already knew the answer. "No," Park Hannah replied honestly. "Everything I learned makes me more convinced that this meeting is a trap. Vorthok has never shown mercy to anyone. He has never negotiated with anyone. He destroys everything he touches." Kongwu sat down in the chair next to her. "I have been reading the diplomatic files. Do you know that 12 different species have tried to make peace with the Crimson Claws over the past century? What happened to them? They are all extinct now." Park Hannah felt a chill run down her spine. All of them, every single one. The Zerati tried to offer tribute, giving Vorthok gold and precious stones. He took the tribute and then destroyed their homeworld anyway. The Benthans tried to form an alliance, offering to help Vorthok conquer other species if he would spare them. He used their help to destroy 3 other civilizations, then turned on the Benthans and wiped them out too. What about the Galactic Council? Have they ever tried to stop him? Kongwu laughed, but there was no humor in it. They tried once, 20 years ago. They put together the largest military fleet in galactic history. Ships from 40 different worlds, all working together to stop Vorthok once and for all. And the battle lasted 6 hours. Vorthok's fleet was outnumbered 10 to 1, but it did not matter. His ships tore through the galactic fleet like it was made of paper. Half the ships were destroyed, and the other half ran away. Since then, the Galactic Council has had an unofficial policy of staying as far away from Vorthok as possible. Park Hannah turned back to her displays. "So why does he want to meet with us? What could humans possibly have that would interest the most dangerous predator in the galaxy?" "That is what scares me," Kongwu replied. "Maybe he has heard about human expansion into space and wants to stop us before we become a threat. Maybe he wants to study us before he destroys us. Or maybe he just wants to kill some humans for entertainment." On the bridge, Captain Li Tae was having similar thoughts. He stood at the main viewing window, watching the stars flow past in hyperspace. Kim Swa approached him from the engineering station. "Captain, I have been running diagnostics on all our systems. Everything is working perfectly, but I have to ask, what exactly is our plan if this meeting goes bad?" Li Tae turned to look at her. Kim Swa was young, but she was not naive. She understood the danger they were facing. "Our plan," he said quietly, "is to hope that it does not go bad, and if it does," Li Tae was quiet for a long moment. "Then we try to get a warning message back to Earth before we die. At least then, humanity will know what they are facing." Kim Swa nodded. She did not like the answer, but she understood it. "How long until we reach Harmony Point?" 18 hours. "And how long until Vorthok arrives?" "According to our intelligence, his ship is faster than ours. He will probably arrive first." Kim Swa felt her stomach twist with fear. The idea of arriving at Harmony Point to find Vorthok already waiting for them was terrifying. It would be like walking into a spider's web. Back in the computer room, Park Hannah was reading the final file in her research. This one was different from the others. It was not about Vorthok's conquests or his physical abilities. It was about his psychology, written by the few scientists who had studied the Crimson Claw species from a distance. The report was not encouraging. It described a species that had evolved without the ability to feel empathy or compassion. They understood only strength and weakness, dominance and submission. The concept of cooperation was completely alien to them. They do not make friends, Park Hannah read aloud. They do not form alliances. They do not negotiate or compromise. They see every other living being as either a threat to be destroyed or a resource to be used. There is no middle ground in their thinking. She closed the file and leaned back in her chair. Tomorrow, she would be sitting across from a creature that viewed her as nothing more than a talking piece of meat. A creature that had destroyed entire civilizations without feeling even a moment of regret. And somehow, she and her friends were supposed to have a conversation with this monster and live to tell about it. "We are going to die," she said to the empty room. But even as she said it, she felt a small spark of curiosity, because there was still one question that none of the files could answer. Why had Vorthok requested this meeting? What could the galaxy's most perfect predator possibly want from humanity? Tomorrow, they would find out. Harmony Point Station floated in the darkness of space like a small metal flower. It was built to be neutral ground, a place where different species could meet safely. The station had white walls, soft lighting, and comfortable meeting rooms. Everything was designed to make visitors feel calm and peaceful. Today, it felt more like a tomb. Captain Lee Tay brought the Sol Dawn alongside the station's docking port. Through the bridge windows, they could see another ship already docked on the opposite side. It was massive, black as night, and covered with weapon systems that could destroy entire fleets. "That is Vorthok's ship," whispered Kim Swa from her station, the Bone Crusher. "Intelligence reports say it has killed more people than some entire wars." The ship looked like it had been built for one purpose only, to bring death to everything it encountered. Its hull was covered in spikes and claws, as if the ship itself was a living predator. Red lights glowed along its sides like angry eyes. "He is already here," said Kongwu quietly, "waiting for us." Park Hannah checked her datapad one more time. She had spent the entire trip studying everything known about Crimson Claw behavior, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. In a few minutes, she would be face to face with the most dangerous creature in the galaxy. "Remember," said Captain Lee Tay as they prepared to leave their ship, "we are not just representing ourselves, we are representing all of humanity. Whatever happens in that meeting room will decide the fate of our entire species." The four humans walked through the docking tube and into Harmony Point Station. The hallways were empty except for a few maintenance robots. Even the station's crew had been evacuated for safety. They were completely alone with whatever was waiting for them. The central meeting chamber was a large, round room with a domed ceiling that showed the stars outside. In the center was a circular table with chairs arranged around it. The room was designed to make everyone feel equal, with no head of the table and no position of power. But today, equality was the last thing on anyone's mind. They entered the chamber and took their seats. Kongwu sat facing the main entrance, with Park Hannah on his right and Kim Swa on his left. Captain Lee Tay positioned himself where he could see all the exits, though they all knew there was nowhere to run if things went wrong. The minutes passed slowly. The only sound was the quiet hum of the station's air system and the nervous breathing of the four humans. Park Hannah kept checking her datapad, reading the same information over and over again. Kim Swa's hand stayed near her emergency communicator, ready to send a final message if needed. Then the door opened. The first thing that entered the room was not Vorthok himself, but the smell. It was like metal and blood and something else that made their primitive human brains scream danger. The scent of a perfect predator. Then came the sound. Heavy footsteps that seemed to shake the floor with each step. The sound of claws clicking against metal as something very large moved through the doorway. Finally, Vorthok himself entered the chamber. He was even more terrifying in person than in any of the intelligence photos. 8 feet tall and covered in crimson armor-like skin that looked harder than steel. His arms were as thick as tree trunks, ending in claws that could easily tear a human in half. His legs were built for running down prey, powerful and fast. But it was his eyes that made the humans freeze in their chairs. They glowed with a red light that seemed to come from deep inside his skull. They were the eyes of something that had killed so many times that death meant nothing to it anymore. Vorthok moved into the chamber like water flowing downhill, smooth and deadly. Every step was calculated, every movement was precise. He was a perfect killing machine wearing the shape of a living being. The apex predator stopped just inside the doorway and looked at each human in turn. His gaze lingered on each face, studying them like a scientist studying insects. When his eyes met theirs, it took every bit of courage they had not to look away. From the observation decks high above the chamber, representatives from dozens of species watched through reinforced windows. They had come to witness what they expected to be the final moments of the human delegation. Some had even placed bets on how quickly the humans would die. "The small one will break first," whispered an Alteran diplomat to his companion. "Look how she shakes." No, replied a Centaurian observer. The tall one in the middle has the look of a leader. Vorthok will kill him first to destroy their hope. But the humans did not break. They sat in their chairs, afraid but not fleeing. They met Vorthok, gazed directly, neither challenging him nor showing submission. They simply waited. This seemed to interest the apex predator. His glowing eyes focused on Kangwu, who sat perfectly still in his chair. The diplomat's hands were folded calmly on the table in front of him. Though everyone could see the tension in his shoulders, Vorthok began to speak. His voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. When he spoke, the words seemed to come from somewhere deep in his chest, vibrating through the air with physical force. I am Vorthok of the Crimson Claw, he said, though everyone already knew who he was. I have come to this place to speak with the humans. He paused, his red eyes never leaving Kangwu's face. You are smaller than I expected, weaker. Your species is new to the galaxy, yet you do not show proper fear in my presence. Kangwu found his voice, though it took great effort to keep it steady. We have great respect for your reputation, Vorthok, but we came here to talk, not to show fear. Something flickered in the predator's eyes. It might have been surprise, or curiosity, or anger. It was impossible to tell. Respect. Vorthok repeated the word slowly, as if tasting it. An interesting choice of words. Most species that respect me are already dead. He began to move around the table, circling the humans like a shark circling prey. His claws clicked against the metal floor with each step. The sound echoed in the chamber like a countdown to execution. I have studied your species, Vorthok continued, as he walked. I have watched your expansion into space. I have observed your behavior during crisis situations. Park Hannah felt her heart pounding so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. This was it. This was when Vorthok would reveal his plans to destroy humanity, just as he had destroyed so many species before them. I expected to find another weak species, the apex predator said. Another civilization ripe for conquest. Another collection of prey animals pretending to be intelligent. He stopped directly behind Kangwu's chair. The human diplomat could feel the heat radiating from the massive creature's body. One swipe of those claws could end his life before he could even think to move. Instead, Vorthok said, his voice dropping to almost a whisper, I found something that does not make sense. The observers in the galleries above leaned forward, straining to hear every word. This was not going the way anyone had expected. Vorthok was not attacking. He was not making demands. He was talking. Your species confuses me, the predator admitted, and the words sent shockwaves through everyone listening. The galaxy's most perfect killer had just admitted to being confused by humans. Vorthok moved to stand directly across from Kangwu, his glowing eyes boring into the diplomat's face. I have observed your behavior during disasters. When your ships are damaged, when your colonies are attacked, when your people are in danger. He paused, his massive head tilting slightly to one side. You do not behave like prey, but you also do not behave like predators. You do something else entirely. Park Hannah realized that this was her moment. As the team's expert on alien psychology, she had to speak up. What do you mean? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Vorthok's attention shifted to her like a spotlight. Being the focus of those glowing red eyes was like standing in front of a furnace. You sacrifice yourselves for others. You risk your lives to save the weak. You share your resources with species that could never repay you. His voice grew louder, more intense. In my understanding of the universe, these behaviors are impossible. The strong should dominate the weak. The fit should survive while the unfit perish. This is the natural order. He leaned forward, his claws scraping against the table's surface. Yet your species consistently chooses to protect the weak, to lift up the fallen, to help others even when it costs you greatly. Why do you do this? What advantage does it give you? The chamber fell silent. Even the observers in the galleries had stopped whispering. The question hung in the air like a challenge. Kangwu looked at his companions, then back at Vorthok. For the first time since entering the chamber, he felt a spark of hope. The apex predator had not come here to destroy them. He had come here because he was genuinely puzzled by human behavior. We do it, Kangwu said carefully, because we believe it is right. Vorthok's eyes narrowed. Right, what is right? I know only what is strong and what is weak, what is useful and what is worthless, what survives and what dies. Then maybe, said Kangwu, his voice growing stronger, we can teach you something new. The silence that followed was deafening. No one had ever offered to teach Vorthok anything. The very idea was so bold, so impossible, that it left everyone speechless. But Vorthok did not attack. He did not roar in anger or lash out with his claws. Instead, he sat down in the chair across from Kangwu, his massive form making the furniture look like a toy. The meeting chamber felt different now. The air was still thick with tension, but it was no longer the tension of waiting to die. It was the tension of something important happening, something that might change the galaxy forever. Vorthok sat across from the humans like a mountain of living death. His red eyes never stopped moving, watching every small gesture, every change in expression. He was still a predator, but now he was a predator who wanted to learn something. You say you can teach me, Vorthok said, his deep voice rumbling through the chamber. But first, I will tell you what I have observed about your species. Then, you will explain to me why you behave in ways that should lead to your extinction. Kangwoo nodded slowly. We are listening. Vorthok leaned back in his chair, which creaked under his massive weight. 3 months ago, one of your colony ships was attacked by space pirates near the Vega system. The ship was damaged and losing life support. Your rescue ships arrived within hours. Park Hannah remembered reading about that incident. The colony ship New Hope had been carrying 500 families to a new world when pirates hit them. It had been a terrible situation. Your rescue ships could have saved perhaps half the people on the damaged vessel, Vorthok continued. The logical choice would have been to take the strongest, the most useful, the ones most likely to survive. Instead, you saved the children, first, then the elderly, then the sick and injured. His glowing eyes focused on each human in turn. You put your own rescue workers at risk to save people who contributed nothing to your species' survival. Some of your rescuers died trying to save others who were already dying. This makes no sense. Captain Li Tae found himself speaking before he could stop himself. Those people were not worthless. They were families. Parents and children, and grandparents. Each life mattered. Mattered to whom? Vorthok asked. A dying elderly human cannot fight, cannot work, cannot reproduce. In any logical system, resources should not be wasted on preserving such lives. They mattered to us, said Kim Swa firmly. Every person mattered. Vorthok studied her for a long moment. You are the youngest of your group. In my species, the young learn quickly that weakness must be eliminated. Yet you speak of preserving the weak as if it were obvious truth. He stood up and began pacing around the table again. I have other examples. 2 years ago, your species encountered the Rillon. Refugees, their homeworld had been destroyed by a natural disaster. They had nothing to offer you. No technology, no resources, no military strength. Logic would suggest you ignore them or enslave them. Park Hannah knew this story too. The Rylans were a peaceful species whose sun had gone supernova. The survivors had fled in old ships, looking for any world that would take them. Instead, Vorthok continued, you gave them an entire planet. Good farmland, clean water, everything they needed to rebuild their civilization. You asked for nothing in return. You even helped them construct new cities. They needed help, Kangwoo said simply. Why was that your concern? Vorthok demanded. They were not your species. They could not help you. They were simply another mouth to feed, another problem to solve. Yet you treated them as if they were your own people. The apex predator stopped pacing and faced the humans directly. In my experience, species only help others when they gain something in return. Alliance partners, trade agreements, military support, but you helped the Rylans for no reason except that they needed help. He sat down again, his massive frame settling into the chair with a sound like grinding stone. There are dozens of other examples. Your medical ships that travel to disaster areas, providing free treatment to any species that needs it. Your food shipments to worlds suffering from famine, even when those worlds have nothing to trade. Your protection of smaller species from pirates and raiders. Vorthok's voice grew quieter, more thoughtful. I began to study your history to understand this behavior. I thought perhaps you were simply naive, too new to the galaxy to understand how survival works. The chamber fell silent except for the quiet hum of the station's systems. In the observation galleries above, representatives from dozens of species hung on every word. This was the most anyone had ever heard Vorthok speak without killing someone. What I found, the predator continued, was even more confusing. Your species has a long history of warfare, conquest, and violence. You have fought terrible wars against your own kind. You have committed acts of cruelty that would impress even my people. Park Hannah felt a chill run down her spine. Of course, Vorthok would have studied humanity's darker history. Yet somewhere in your development, you began to change. He said, you started creating rules about how wars should be fought. You developed concepts like mercy for defeated enemies. You began to protect the innocent even during conflicts. He leaned forward, his red eyes burning with intensity. Most interesting of all, you began to feel shame about your past violence. You teach your children about your historical mistakes, so they will not repeat them. This is incomprehensible. To me, Kim Swa spoke up hesitantly. You do not feel shame about the species you have destroyed. Vorthok looked at her as if she had asked whether he felt shame about breathing. Why would I feel shame about eliminating the weak? It is the natural order. The strong survive, the weak perish. This is how the universe works. But what if the universe could work differently? Asked Kangwoo. The question hung in the air like a challenge. Vorthok's eyes narrowed, and for a moment the humans thought they might have pushed too far. Explain, the predator said finally. Kangwoo took a deep breath. This was the most important moment of his life, and possibly the most important moment in human history. You see strength and weakness as the only measures that matter. But what if there were other kinds of strength? Such as the strength to help others even when it costs you, the strength to show mercy to defeated enemies, the strength to build something better than what came before. Vorthok was quiet for a long time, his massive head tilted slightly as he considered this. You speak of these things as if they were advantages, but helping others weakens you. Showing mercy allows enemies to return. Building takes resources that could be used for conquest. Park Hannah decided to try a different approach. Vorthok, you said you studied our history. Did you study how we became spacefaring? Yes. You developed technology through competition and warfare. That is only part of the story, she said. We also developed technology through cooperation, scientists from different nations sharing knowledge, engineers working together on projects too big for any one group, explorers helping each other survive in dangerous environments. She pulled up a holographic display showing images from Earth's history. Our greatest achievements came not from conquest, but from cooperation. The first moon landing, the cure for cancer, the development of faster-than-light travel. All of these required thousands of people working together toward a common goal. Vorthok studied the images with interest, but surely the strongest individuals led these efforts. Sometimes, Kim Swa said, but often our greatest leaders were not the strongest or the most ruthless. They were the ones who could inspire others to work together. They were the ones who could see beyond their own immediate needs. This makes no evolutionary sense, Vorthok said, but his voice carried less certainty than before. Maybe evolution is not just about individual survival, suggested Kang Wu. Maybe it is also about the survival of the group. A species that works together, that protects its weak members, that builds something lasting. Maybe that species is actually stronger than one that only follows the law of the jungle. Captain Li Te added his voice to the discussion. You have conquered many species, Vorthok. You are the strongest individual in the galaxy. But what have you built? What will last after you are gone? The question seemed to hit Vorthok like a physical blow. His glowing eyes dimmed slightly, and he was quiet for a very long time. I have built an empire, he said finally, but his voice lacked conviction. Have you? Asked Park Hannah gently, or have you simply destroyed what others built? When you are gone, will your people remember you as a builder or as a destroyer? Vorthok stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. For a moment, the humans thought he might attack them after all, but instead, he walked to the large window that showed the stars outside. In my species, he said slowly, the strong rule until they are defeated by someone stronger. Then they are forgotten. Their names are erased, their achievements become the property of their conqueror. He turned back to face the humans. You are suggesting that there might be a way to be remembered for something other than destruction. We are suggesting, said Kang Wu carefully, that true strength might not be about domination at all. The silence that followed was profound. In the observation galleries, alien diplomats held their breath. They were witnessing something unprecedented. The galaxy's most feared predator beginning to question the very foundations of his worldview. Finally, Vorthok spoke again. If strength is not about domination, then what is it about? The question would change everything. The question echoed through the chamber like thunder. If strength was not about domination, then what was it about? The four humans looked at each other, knowing that their answer could determine the fate of countless worlds. Kang Wu stood up, slowly, meeting Vorthok's burning gaze directly. True strength is about making others stronger. Vorthok's head tilted, like a predator trying to understand the sound of unfamiliar prey. Explain this. When you conquer a species, you gain their resources for a time, Kang Wu said, choosing his words carefully. But when you help a species grow stronger, you gain an ally forever. Allies can betray you. Yes, they can. And that is exactly why helping them requires real strength. Park Hannah joined the conversation, her scientific mind finding ways to explain the concept. Vorthok in nature. There are many examples of cooperation leading to greater strength. Wolves hunt in packs because together they can bring down prey much larger than any single wolf could handle. Wolves cooperate with other wolves, Vorthok replied. They do not cooperate with deer, but humans do, said Kim Swap. We cooperate with species that are nothing like us. We help them not because we expect them to become like us, but because diversity makes everyone stronger. Vorthok began pacing again, his claws clicking against the metal floor. You speak in riddles. How does helping the weak make anyone stronger? Captain Li Te decided to try a different approach. Vorthok, you are the strongest individual in the galaxy, but you are still just one person. No matter how powerful you are, you cannot be everywhere at once. You cannot know everything. You cannot do everything. This is true, but imagine if instead of conquering other species, you would help them become stronger. Imagine if you had 1,000 allies, each contributing their own unique strengths. Would that not make you more powerful than you are now? Vorthok stopped pacing and stared at the human captain. You suggest I should have made friends instead of enemies. We suggest that you still could. The words hung in the air like a bridge, between two worlds in the observation galleries above. Alien diplomats whispered frantically to each other. The idea of Vorthok making friends was so absurd that some of them thought the humans had lost their minds. But Vorthok was not laughing. He was thinking. I have spent my entire life believing that the universe is a competition, he said slowly. That there are winners and losers, predators and prey, the strong and the weak. You are telling me that this is wrong. Not wrong, said Park Hannah gently. Incomplete. She activated her datapad and projected a holographic image into the center of the chamber. It showed a garden on Earth, with flowers of many different colors growing together. Competition exists in nature, she explained, but so does cooperation. These flowers compete for sunlight and water, but they also help each other. Their roots share nutrients through underground networks. When one type of flower is attacked by insects, it sends chemical signals to warn the others. Vorthok studied the image with fascination. They help their competitors. They help their neighbors. Because if the whole garden dies, they all die. But if the whole garden thrives, they all thrive. You see the galaxy as a garden, Vorthok said. It was not a question. We see it as something that could be, replied Kang Wu. The apex predator. It was quiet for a long time, his glowing eyes fixed on the holographic flowers. When he spoke again, his voice was softer than before. I have never created anything beautiful, he said. I have only destroyed. The admission sent shockwaves through everyone listening. The galaxy's most feared predator had just confessed to feeling regret. It is not too late, said Kim Swa quietly. You could start creating now. Vorthok looked at her with something that might have been hope. What would I create? Peace, said Kang Wu. You could help build a galaxy where species work together, instead of fighting each other, where the strong protect the weak instead of destroying them. Why would I want such a galaxy? The question was asked with genuine curiosity, not hostility. Vorthok was trying to understand a completely different way of thinking. Park Hannah stood up and walked closer to the massive predator. Every instinct screamed at her to stay away, but she forced herself to approach. Because in such a galaxy, you would be remembered not as a destroyer, but as a protector. Not as a monster, but as a hero. Heroes. Vorthok repeated the word slowly. In my culture, there are no heroes, only survivors. Then maybe it is time to change your culture. The chamber fell silent again. The idea of the Crimson Claws changing their fundamental beliefs was almost unthinkable. They had been predators for thousands of years. Change is difficult, Vorthok said finally. My people have lived by the law of strength for countless generations. They would not understand this new way. Then teach them, suggested Captain Li Te. The same way you learn to be a predator, they can learn to be protectors. And if they refuse to change, Kang Wu met the predator's gaze steadily. Then you will have to decide what kind of leader you want to be. One who rules through fear, or one who leads through example. Vorthok was quiet for several minutes, his massive frame perfectly still, except for the steady glow of his red eyes. The humans waited, knowing that whatever he decided would shape the future of the galaxy. There is something I have never told anyone, Vorthok said suddenly, something that has haunted me for years. The humans leaned forward, sensing that they were about to hear something important. After I destroyed the Melodian Empire, I walked through the ruins of their greatest city. In what had been their central art gallery, I found something that had survived the bombing. His voice grew softer, more introspective. It was a sculpture made by a Melodian child. Crude, simple, but it showed a family holding hands. Parents and children together, protecting each other. Vorthok's glowing eyes dimmed slightly. I stared at that sculpture for hours. I tried to understand why someone would create such a thing. In my culture, families are just temporary alliances. The strong leave the weak behind. But this sculpture showed something different. What did you do with it? Asked Park Hannah, gently. I destroyed it, Vorthok admitted. I crushed it with my own hands because I could not understand what it meant, but I have thought about it every day since then. The confession hung in the air like a weight. The galaxy's most feared predator was revealing a moment of doubt, a crack in his armor of certainty. You destroyed it because it scared you, said Kim Swa, and her words were not an accusation but an understanding. Yes, Vorthok said simply. It showed me a kind of strength I had never imagined. The strength to care for others more than yourself. Kang Wu stood up and walked to the window where Vorthok had been standing earlier. Outside, the stars shone with cold light, distant and beautiful. That sculpture represented something my people call love, he said. It is the strongest force in the universe. Love, Vorthok repeated the word like he was learning a new language. Love makes parents sacrifice themselves to save their children. It makes soldiers fight harder to protect their friends than they would fight to protect themselves. It makes entire civilizations work together toward goals they will never live to see completed. Vorthok joined Kang Wu at the window. Standing next to the massive predator, the human diplomat looked tiny and fragile, but he did not step away. You are saying that this love is a kind of strength, the strongest kind, and you believe I could learn this strength? Kang Wu turned to face the apex predator. I believe anyone can learn it, even you. For the first time since entering the chamber, Vorthok smiled. It was not a pleasant sight. His teeth were designed for tearing flesh, not expressing joy. But it was a real smile, the first genuine emotion he had shown. Then teach me, he said. Teach me about this strength called love. In the observation galleries, alien diplomats sat in stunned silence. They had just witnessed the impossible. The galaxy's most perfect predator had asked to learn about love. The universe would never be the same. The conversation that followed changed the course of galactic history. For 3 hours, the 4 humans and the apex predator talked about concepts that had never been discussed in that chamber before. Love, compassion, sacrifice, hope. Words that had no meaning in Crimson Claw language were slowly being translated into understanding. Park Hannah explained how human parents would die to protect their children, not because logic demanded it, but because love made any other choice impossible. Kim Swa described how human engineers would work for years on projects that would benefit people they would never meet. Captain Li Tae talked about soldiers who stayed behind to save civilians, knowing they would not survive. With each example, Vorthok's worldview shifted slightly. He began to see that what he had always interpreted as weakness might actually be a different kind of strength. In my species, Vorthok said, during a quiet moment, when a Crimson Claw becomes too old or injured to fight, they are abandoned, left to die alone. We call this efficiency. What do you call it now? Asked Kongwu. Vorthok was quiet for a long time. Waste, he said finally. We waste all the knowledge and experience of our elders. We waste the loyalty they could give us. We waste the love they could teach us. The word love still sounded strange coming from his lips, but he was learning to use it. Change will not be easy for your people, Park Hannah observed. Thousands of years of thinking one way cannot be changed overnight. No, Vorthok agreed, but perhaps it can be changed over time. Perhaps the young ones can learn what I am learning. Now he stood up and walked back to the center of the chamber. I have a proposal for your species. The humans tensed slightly. They had made incredible progress, but they were not sure what Vorthok was about to suggest. I want to form an alliance between the Crimson Claws and humanity, not a treaty of conquest or domination, but a partnership of equals. The words sent shockwaves through the observation galleries. Alien diplomats frantically transmitted messages to their home worlds. The idea of Vorthok forming an equal partnership with anyone was unprecedented. What kind of partnership? Asked Captain Li Tae carefully. You will teach my people about cooperation, compassion, and this strength you call love. In return, we will use our military power to protect the weak species of the galaxy. Together, we will build the garden you showed me. Kongwu felt his heart racing. This was beyond their wildest hopes. You would protect other species instead of conquering them. Yes, I have spent my life as a destroyer. I want to learn what it means to be a protector. Kim Swa leaned forward in her chair. Your people might not understand this change. Some of them might resist. Vorthok's eyes glowed brighter. Then they will learn, as I have learned. Change is possible, even for predators. He began pacing again, but now his movements seemed different. Less like a hunter stalking prey, more like a leader planning for the future. I have been thinking about the sculpture I destroyed, he said. The one that showed a family protecting each other. I want to commission human artists to create something similar, but larger. A monument that shows different species working together, protecting each other. Where would you put such a monument? Asked Park Hannah. On Scarith Prime, my homeworld. In the center of our greatest city, so that every Crimson Claw will see it. And remember that strength comes in many forms. The humans exchanged glances. They could hardly believe what they were hearing. The apex predator wanted to build a monument to cooperation on his homeworld. There is something else, Vorthok continued. I want to formally apologize to the families of those I have killed. I cannot bring back the dead, but I can acknowledge the wrong I have done. The chamber fell completely silent. In the observation galleries, several alien diplomats fainted from shock. Vorthok, the destroyer, wanted to apologize for his conquests. An apology would mean a great deal to the survivors, said Kongwu quietly. And I want to make reparations. My species has taken much from the galaxy. We should give something back. What did you have in mind? Vorthok stopped pacing and faced the humans directly. We will rebuild. Every world we destroyed, every city we burned, every life we cut short, we will work to repair the damage. It will take generations, but we will do it. Captain Li Tae shook his head in amazement. Your people really might resist such changes. Then, I will do what leaders do, Vorthok replied. I will lead by example. He walked to the center of the chamber and looked up at the observation galleries where hundreds of alien diplomats watched in fascination and terror. Citizens of the galaxy, he said, his voice carrying clearly to every listening ear. I am Vorthok of the Crimson Claw. For too long, I have been your nightmare. Today, I want to become something different. The galleries erupted in whispers and gasps. No one had expected a public declaration. I have learned from these humans that true strength is not about domination. It is about protection. It is about lifting others up instead of tearing them down. It is about building instead of destroying. He turned back to the human delegation. These 4 brave souls came here expecting to die. Instead, they taught me how to live. What happened next would be remembered for millennia. Vorthok, the apex predator, the most feared being in the galaxy, slowly lowered himself to one knee before the human delegation. It was not a bow of submission. It was not a bow of defeat. It was a bow of recognition, acknowledgement that he had found something greater than himself. I bow to the strength you have shown me, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the galaxy through the watching diplomats. I bow to the courage it took to face me without weapons. I bow to the wisdom that taught me a better way. The humans sat in stunned silence. They had hoped to survive this meeting. They had never imagined they would witness the transformation of the galaxy's greatest predator. Rise, Vorthok, said Kongwu gently. We are equals now, partners in building something better. Vorthok stood up, and when he did, he was somehow different. Still massive, still powerful, still dangerous, but no longer a creature of pure destruction. He had become something new. The alliance begins today, he declared. From this moment forward, the Crimson Claws are protectors, not conquerors. 6 months later, the first joint human Crimson Claw rescue mission saved 3,000 refugees from a pirate attack. A year later, Crimson Claw engineers worked alongside human scientists to rebuild the Melodian homeworld. 5 years later, the monument on Scarith Prime was completed, showing dozens of different species standing together in unity. But the real change was smaller and more personal. Vorthok learned to laugh at human jokes, even when he did not understand them. He learned to comfort the grieving families of his former victims. He learned to play with human children, his massive claws carefully gentle as he helped them build toy cities. Most importantly, he learned to love. Not romantic love, but the deep affection that comes from caring about something greater than yourself. He loved the garden they were building together. He loved the hope in the eyes of species that no longer feared him. He loved the future they were creating. The galaxy watched in amazement as the transformation continued. Other predator species began to question their own ways. Trade routes that had been closed for centuries reopened. New alliances formed between species that had never trusted each other. And at the center of it all was an unlikely friendship between a human diplomat and an apex predator, who had learned that the strongest force in the universe was not the power to destroy, but the courage to protect. The meeting at Harmony Point had lasted only 1 day, but its effects would echo through the galaxy for generations. The question that had brought them together, why the galaxy's strongest predator would bow to a human, finally had an answer. He bowed because he had learned that true strength comes not from standing over others, but from lifting them up. He bowed because he had discovered that the greatest power is the power to make others stronger. He bowed because for humans had shown him that love is the force that makes civilization possible. And in bowing, he had risen higher than he had ever stood before. The apex predator had become a protector. The destroyer had become a builder. The monster had become a hero. The galaxy was healing, one act of compassion at a time. And it all began with a simple question, asked by beings brave enough to believe that even the most hardened heart could learn to love. In the end, humanity's greatest victory was not conquering their enemy, but helping their enemy conquer himself. And that, perhaps, was the most human thing of all.